it's Thursday. So Valentine's Day is coming up, so I thought what better gift to give this year than the gift of a screaming opossum. Let's get into it. Here is an overview of the stitches you need to know for this pattern. Everything else is going to be explained as part of the video. So these are in US crochet terms, and I will be working my pieces in continuous spirals. We also have some new abbreviations that I am going to be trying out today. So they are single crochet in the back loop only, double crochet in the front loop only, and chain 2 picot. And I will show you those stitches when we get to them. Okay, let's talk tools and materials. So for today's Screaming Opossum, you are going to need 8 ply 100% acrylic yarn in a couple of different colors, and I will talk about those in a minute. You're also going to need a pair of 20mm safety eyes. Now these are quite large for this particular project, so it's fine if you want to use smaller ones, and it's also fine if you just want to stitch on some crosses or something for the eyes. I also recommend a weight for this particular project. I'm using a piece of quartz that I nicked from somebody's landscaping, a 3.5mm hook, pins and needles, scissors, and some stuffing. Okay, so in talking about colors, we are going to need a main grey for the body, a dark grey for the ears and legs, white for the face and belly, pink for the feet, tail, and mouth, and a darker pink or a red for the tongue. So these are the colors that I'm going to be using today. So a written version of today's pattern will be made available to my patrons and will also be listed on my Etsy, and I will leave links to both in the description down below for anybody who's interested. So today we're going to start by making the body, which is just this grey potato in the middle. And it does have this kind of cool texture to it that gives it like a really nice squish. So starting the body, I'm going to grab my pale grey, and we're going to start with a magic ring of 6. We're then going to work an increase into each stitch around for 12 stitches in total. So I'm working invisible increases, which means I work the first stitch through the front loop only, and the second stitch through both loops. You can feel free just to work both stitches through both loops if you prefer to do it that way. Leaving 12 stitches in our round. We're then going to work 6 repeats of a single crochet and then an increase. So there's our first one, and we're going to do that 5 more times around to bring our round up to 18 stitches in total. Row 4, we're going to work 6 repeats of a single crochet, an increase, and then a single crochet. So there's our first one, and we're going to repeat that 5 more times around to bring our row up to 24 single crochet. Like so. Row 5 is 3 repeats of 7 single crochet, and then an increase. So we've worked 9 stitches so far, and we're going to do that 2 more times to bring our round up to 27. So I just like to count every couple of rows and make sure that my row total's coming out correctly, and thankfully we are still on track. That'll just help me having to frog a lot later. So in row 6, we're going to start building up this little white patch that forms the belly. So in order to do that, I'm going to make sure that I have my white handy, and we're going to start by working 19 single crochet in the back loop only. So that's the first use of that new abbreviation, the SCBLO. And what it means is if you look at your stitches, you'll note that there's a loop on the side facing you and a loop on the side facing away. So the one facing you is the front loop and the one facing away is the back loop. when we work through the back loop only, it means I'm inserting my hook through just the loop on that far side of the work, leaving the front loop free. And I'm going to work 19 single crochet in the back loop only, leaving those front loops free. So that's 19 there, and you'll see that it's left us with this little ridge of front loops that we haven't worked into that we can use in later rows. Now the rest of row 6 has to be worked in white. So when we're working color changes, we always need to change to our new color in the stitch before we need that new color to be active. So what that means is I'm going to frog the 19th stitch we just worked, and we're going to use it to change to our white instead. So still working through just the back loop, I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So I've got 2 loops of my grey on my hook. I'm then going to hold that out of the way and grab a strand of my white, because that's the colour I'm using for my possum's belly. Do you guys pronounce the O? Is it opossum, or do you just say possum? Anywho, I'm going to pinch the white at the base of my stitch, yarn over with it and pull through the 2 loops on my hook. I'm then just going to tug on the grey to tighten that down into position. So you'll see there what we have is a finished stitch in our grey, but our white is now on our hook, ready to go. Now I'm going to be working over the top of my grey to carry it around to the other side, just because we will be swapping back to it at the end of this row. So working in our white and going back to working through both loops, we're going to work 8 single crochet, changing back to our grey in the 8th stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll see that I've worked over the top of my white tail as well as carrying the grey under. That's just going to stop that unraveling. 6, 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've done 7, and in our 8th one, changing back to our grey, which we've carried along underneath where we've been stitching. In case that's not super visible, carried our ends along in there. And we're going to change back to our grey the same way we changed to our white. So insert our hook into the stitch, yarn over with the white and pull up a loop, hold the white out of the way, pull the grey forward, pinch at the base of the stitch, yarn over and pull through the 2 white loops, and then tug on the white to tighten the stitch down into position, leaving us with a white stitch, but our grey is now back on our hook ready to go. So that's how we're going to be doing colour changes for the rest of this pattern as well. So from here on out, we're going to be starting to work up this texture. And it's honestly pretty easy once you get the hang of it. So reading the pattern, it says row 7, in grey, we're going to work 9 repeats of a double crochet in the front loop only, and then a single crochet in the back loop only. So that's a lot of information to take in all at once, but we've already changed to our grey. So we've already done that bit, and then we've got the 9 repeats. So we're going to ignore the 9 for now and just look at what's inside those brackets so that we know what we're doing once, and then we can just repeat that as many times as we need to. So for rows 7 through 16, whenever we're doing a double crochet, we're going to work in the front loops that we left free in the previous round. Now, if you want to, you can make this whole process easier by using a whole lot of stitch markers or bobby pins. I am going to start by looking at that row of front loops. I'm going to mark the first one, and then I'm going to mark every second front loop around. So it's basically just alternating between a marked front loop and an unmarked front loop. I'm going to stop pulling on that because that's annoying. Now, I didn't have quite enough to mark the final one as well, but I've marked it in spirit, and I'll move one around as soon as it becomes relevant. This kind of sounds like wind chimes. So, as it says in the brackets, the first stitch of the round is a double crochet in the front loop only. And it's referring to this first front loop that we've marked in the previous round. So we're going to work a double crochet into it. So we do that by yarning over our hook, inserting our hook through that front loop, yarning over and pulling up a loop, leaving you with 3 loops on your hook. You're then just going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, and yarn over and pull through the second 2. So that's our first double crochet in the front loop only. You skip the stitch that falls behind it, and working in the next stitch along, we're going to work a single crochet in the back loop only, working through the back loop of that stitch. There is our single crochet in the back loop only. So that is what the first repeat of those brackets look like, and it wants us to do that 9 times in total. So that's our first one, and we need to do it 8 more times around. So double crochet in the front loop from the previous round, skip the stitch behind it, and single crochet in the back loop. There's our second one. Third. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. Seventh. Eighth. And ninth. And note that that leaves us with 1 grey stitch, so we can pop all of these markers out like so. So that is what those first brackets looks like, laying the foundation for our texture. Then after those brackets, it says work a double crochet in the front loop only. So that is referring to this final front loop in this final grey stitch. But if you read the rest of that row, it then says white 8 single crochet. So we need to change to our white in this stitch. So we start the way we normally would. We yarn over our hook, insert our hook into that front loop, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, leaving you with just the last 2 loops there. And at that point, I'm going to hold my grey out of the way, and I didn't work over my white in that last row. Instead, I'm just going to pull it across the belly like this. Fiddle it. It's a little bit fiddly. We're going to pull it across the belly, pinch it at the base of the stitch, and finish working our colour change. Then to finish row 7, we are working 8 single crochet in our white, changing back to our grey in the last stitch. And as I work, I'm going to insert my hook over the top of both strands on the inside of the work, just to tuck them away. You can feel free to cut off and reattach for your colour changes, or just work over the top of them the whole way around. Either one of those should work for this pattern, because the texture on top is bulky enough that it won't matter much if the white is peeking through a little bit. So that's my 7th white stitch. On the inside, you'll see there, it's all tucked away. To insert my hook into the final stitch and change back to my grey. So that is row 7 done. Now, honestly, I think that might be the hardest row of the whole pattern, excepting maybe one in the mouth, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Because it's just sort of laid the foundation for you, and from here it should be a little bit easier to see where we're going to be working. So row 8 in our grey starts with 9 repeats of a single crochet in the back loop only. We know how to do that one there. And then a double crochet in the front loop only. Now, the front loop, once again, refers to the front loops from the previous round. So not the original round, which is all the way down here, but the previous round, where everywhere we did a single crochet in the back loop only, we are now using that front loop. Now, once again, you can choose to use your bobby pins and go around and mark those loops before you get started on this row. I actually think that now that you've got these little spokes in place, it's relatively easy to see where you're supposed to stitch. So double crochet into that front loop, skipping the stitch behind it. So that is our first repeat there, and we're going to do 8 more of those for 9 in total. Now, one thing that I do struggle with is knowing the names of slightly fancier stitches like this. So if this kind of staggering of double crochets has a name and you happen to know it, please do let me know. I find it really, really hard to Google for things like that. So there we go, and you should see here it kind of forms this almost little zigzag, staggered stitch. All of your double crochets should be falling between the double crochets of the previous row. If yours aren't coming out neatly staggered like this, it does mean that something has gone wrong, and I do recommend you go back and you count and just make sure that you've skipped the correct stitches. So then to continue on with row 8, the next instruction is to single crochet in the back loop only, and I can see there that we are changing back to our white. So just the same way as last time, and working 8 white single crochet across the belly, changing back to our grey in the final stitch. Like so. So there we are at the end of row 8. So we're going to be alternating row 7 and row 8 for 5 more rows, so all the way up to the end of row 13, just to build up a little sausage with this texture on it. Now you should absolutely use stitch markers as much as you need to make this easier for yourself, but do keep in mind that you can absolutely make this pattern easier by removing all of the back loop and front loop nonsense and replacing all of the double crochet with regular single crochet. It will build you the exact same shape, it just won't have this texture on it. So as you can see here, my belly is slanting off slightly to one side. You're just not going to be able to notice on the finished thing, so try not to worry about that too much. Flipping it inside out for a second, you'll see that all of my ends have been tucked away and worked over the top of. There's just sort of nothing loose or hanging around other than my starting string. This texture looks really interesting on the inside. That's quite dense, but anyway, on the outside there is our little fuzzy sausage. And if you lost count of how many rows you've done, looking down the edge of your white, you should be able to see 1, 2, 3, 4 of those double crochets all in a little row. And so if you've got that, that's correct. And then next column across should only have 3 in it at this point. So that's how you know you've done your 7 rows. And at this point, we are going to start closing in our little sausage. Row 14, starting with a decrease. And then working 8 repeats of the single crochet in the back loop only and a double crochet in the front loop only. This is our first one. I'm going to repeat that 7 more times around. So that should leave you with 1 grey stitch in your round. So that is the first stitch of our decrease. And then the first white stitch is the second stitch of our decrease. And I'm going to use that to work a colour change back to our white because we are continuing this little belly bit. And then work 7 single crochet in your white, changing back to your grey in the 7th stitch. Now, depending on the size of the weight you're using, if you are using one, you may need to insert it now. I'm still going to wait just another couple of rows because mine is quite small and will quite comfortably fit through the opening. Row 15 again starts with a decrease. Then 7 repeats of a single crochet in the back loop only and a double crochet in the front loop only. So there's our first one, and we need to do 6 more. Which should leave you with 2 grey stitches at the end of your row, and we're going to work a decrease using those 2 stitches, changing back to our white. And then just working 7 single crochet in our white, changing back to our grey in the final stitch. So there we are at the end of row 15, and we should have 23 stitches in our round. Okay, row 16 starts with a decrease again. And then 6 repeats of a single crochet in the back loop only and a double crochet in the front loop only. Leaving you with 2 grey stitches, which you're going to work a decrease across. Changing back to your white. And then working 7 single crochet in our white, changing back to our grey in the 7th stitch. Like so. So at this point I am going to add my weight to my butt. That's just because there is a lot of stuff that we're attaching to the face, and it does make him a little bit front heavy. It's not the end of the world if you don't want to put a weight in for whatever reason, but one in the butt can help. And then I'm just going to stuff. Oh, excuse me, sir. Bringing us to row 17. So row 17 starts with 2 repeats of a regular single crochet, and then a double crochet in the front loops only. That's 1. And 2. We're then going to work a single crochet and a decrease, and then 2 repeats of a double crochet in the front loop only, and then a single crochet. That's our first one. And our second one, then it's another double crochet in the front loop only, and a decrease. Now we're not going to bother changing to our white again. Instead we are just going to work 5 single crochet all in our grey, and then a decrease in the last 2 white stitches. And I am going to trim off my white at this point. So you should have 18 stitches in your round. We have just 2 rows to go. So row 18 is 6 repeats of a single crochet and then a decrease. There's our first one, and we're going to do that 5 more times around, bringing our row down to 12 stitches. like so. Now this is your last chance to add any more stuffing if you need to. Probably not that much. And this is the only piece of the whole possum that actually gets stuffed. Good little potato that it is. We're then just going to work our final row, row 19, which is 6 decreases around for 6 stitches in total. And finish off. So you'll see you've got a little opening left at the top. You're going to take your remaining yarn and pull it through the front loops only of each of those 6 stitches. And pull to close. It's like a drawstring bag or a reverse magic ring. Then just going to tuck that end away inside. And there is our little possum potato. And it's got such a fun, scruffy texture to it. Pop that to one side. Okay, so next up we are going to make the face piece. So that is this top layer of the mouth. And we're going to start in our pink, just at the very tip of the nose. We're going to start by making a magic ring of 6. So we're going to work the first 5 stitches and then change to our white in the 6th stitch. That's our first 5. I'm going to tighten the ring off a little bit just because I think it makes the color change easier. I'm then going to insert my hook and work my color change. Finish tightening that off the rest of the way. You won't need your pink again, but I do suggest you work over the top of it for a round just to really help lock that color change in so it doesn't get loose and wibbly wobbly over time. So for row 2, we're going to work 3 repeats of a single crochet and then an increase. And I am working invisible increases here. So there's our first repeat and we're going to do it 2 more times. So at this point I am going to trim off my pink, being careful not to trim off my white. And that's the end of row 2. You should have 9 stitches in your round. For row 3, it's 3 repeats of 2 single crochet and then an increase. That's our first one, and we're going to repeat it 2 more times to get us up to 12 stitches in our round. Then row 4 is 3 repeats of 3 single crochet and an increase to get us up to 15 stitches in our round. Row 5 is 3 repeats of 4 single crochet and then an increase to bring us up to 18 stitches. Row 6 is 3 repeats of 5 single crochet and then an increase to get us up to 21 stitches around. Row 7 is 3 repeats of 6 single crochet and an increase to get us up to 24 stitches around. Row 8 is 3 repeats of 7 single crochet and an increase, which will bring you up to 27 stitches around. Row 9 is 3 repeats of 8 single crochet and an increase to get us up to 30 stitches in our round. Row 10 is then 3 repeats of 9 single crochet and an increase to get us up to 33 stitches in our round. And then row 11 is 3 repeats of 10 single crochet and an increase, which will get us to 36 stitches in our round. So there we are at the end of row 11, and you'll see what we've got is this almost triangular type shape, it's a little triangle pyramid. That's just what happens when you evenly place 3 increases in your round over lots and lots of rounds. You end up with a triangle pyramid, or a vaguely triangular pyramid. So row 12, we are going to start with 2 repeats of 11 single crochet and an increase. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and then an increase. So that's 1, and I'm going to do that again. So that's 2. We are then going to work 11 single crochet, and then a single crochet in the back loop only. And I do recommend you mark that front loop, just so that you don't lose it in the snowstorm that is this face. We will be using that later. So you should have 38 stitches in your round, and then row 13 starts with 8 single crochet. Then a single crochet 3 together. Now that is just a decrease that you do over 3 stitches. So you insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and do the same thing in the next stitch and in the 3rd stitch. So you should be left with 4 loops on your hook, and yarn over and pull through all 4. So that's our single crochet 3 together. We're then going to work 15 single crochet. Like so, and we're going to work another single crochet 3 together. 1, 2, 3, and complete the stitch. Then we're going to work 8 single crochet, but we're going to change to our grey in the 8th stitch. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then in this 8th one we're going to change to our grey. So it's the same colour we used on our body. And this row is just going to help the two pieces so the face and the body blend together a little easier. And we're going to finish this row by working a double crochet in the front loop only, and the front loop is that one we marked at the end of the previous row. Just like that, skipping the stitch behind it. So row 14 is our final row of the face, and it starts with 7 single crochet, and note that we're working in our grey now. So that's 7. Then we're going to work a single crochet 3 together, and note that that should fall with the second stitch of it being the single crochet 3 together from the previous round. So that should help you keep everything lined up correctly. Then 13 single crochet. Like so. Then we're going to work another single crochet 3 together, and again the second stitch of it should fall into the single crochet 3 together from the previous round. Then it is simply 8 single crochet back to the start of the row. And the last stitch falls into that double crochet, like so, and finish off. Now, to all of my very brave beginners out there, if you want to, that can be your whole head. You do not need to go on to make the very fiddly inside mouth pieces or to assemble it into this open scream. You can literally leave this piece all puffed out like a triangle and attach it as a head that isn't screaming. So there are plenty of off-ramps, so to speak, in this pattern that will allow you to like adjust for the difficulty level that you feel like dealing with that day. But for everybody here looking for screams, you're going to take this face piece. The double crochet we did should be the center of the forehead, and then we've got these like 2 little jaw bones on either side, and I'm going to flatten that down. So the nose is the nose. So, and then the 2 points where we were working those decreases, those single crochet 3 togethers, form kind of the jawbone. So that's the face piece that will eventually kind of go over the top there. So now we need to make a few other pieces to fill out this mouth. So next up is the bottom jaw, which is worked entirely in our white, which does make it a little bit easier, but it's very, very similar to the face piece we just made. So we're going to start with a magic ring of 6. Then work 3 repeats of a single crochet and an increase. So that leaves me with 9 stitches in my round. Row 3 is 3 repeats of 2 single crochet and then an increase to get us up to 12 stitches. Row 4 is 3 repeats of 3 single crochet and an increase to get us up to 15. Row 5 is 3 repeats of 2 single crochet, an increase, and then 2 single crochet to get us up to 18 stitches. Then row 6 is 3 repeats of 5 single crochet and an increase to get us up to 21. We then work 2 rows of 21 single crochet around for a combined total of 42 stitches. And finish off. So that is our lower jaw, and just like with the face, we are going to just flatten that out. There is no right or wrong side to this particular piece. I'm flattening mine so that my finishing off point is off to one side, but it doesn't make any kind of difference if you wanted to do it pretty much any other way. So that is our bottom jaw, which again will be like where, and then just yeah, for the overall effect of wah! Yeah. Next up, we are going to be making the inner mouth pieces, which start off pretty simply, but do get a little bit fiddly towards the ends as we're adding in the little teeth. As you can see there, the teeth are kind of inset amongst the pink. But there is a trick to it. There's always a trick to it. So I'll show you the trick, and if you don't like it, you can always just sew your possum's mouth shut, which sounds way more brutal than it is, and your project is simpler again. We're going to start with the inside mouthpiece for the top jaw in our pink with a magic ring of 6. We're then going to work a single crochet, an increase, a single crochet, 3 single crochet all into the same stitch, a single crochet, and an increase to finish off our round. Now that should leave you with 10 stitches in a vague kind of little triangle. In row 3, we're going to be emphasizing that triangle. So we start with 2 single crochet, then an increase, 2 single crochet, 3 single crochet all into the same stitch, two single crochet, an increase, and then 1 single crochet back to the start of our round. We should now have 14 stitches around. Row 4, we're going to grow the triangle one size bigger again. So start with 2 single crochet, then an increase, 4 single crochet up to that point, three single crochet all into the same stitch, four single crochet, an increase, and a single crochet back to the start of our row. So our triangle should have like 1 pointy corner and 2 very rounded corners and 18 stitches around. So over the next 2 rows, we are going to be building our teeth. So we're going to start in our pink, but then we will be changing to our white. So we're going to start by working 4 single crochet in our pink, changing to our white in the 4th stitch. So that's 3, and then this is the 4th here. Change to our white. So while we're working in our white, we're going to be working in the back loops only of the stitches. So the first instruction is 4 repeats of a slip stitch. Nice and easy. And then a chain 2 picot. So a chain 2 picot is when you chain twice and then slip stitch into the second chain from your hook. That's the first chain that you did. And that is our chain 2 picot. So that's our first repeat. So that's our first one, and this row calls for us to do that 4 times in total. So we're going to do 3 more now. There's our second one. Our third. And our 4th. So there is our first 4 teeth, and we're then going to work 3 slip stitches along the front of the mouth. And that should fall, and those 3 stitches should fall into the 3 single crochet into the same stitch from the previous row, if that helps you keep things lined up. We're then going to work 4 repeats of a chain 2 picot. And a slip stitch. That's 1. 2. 3. And 4. And finally, in our white, working in the back loop still, we are going to work a single crochet, changing to our pink. Just like that. So you should see here that you have 4 little teeth up one side and 4 little teeth up the other. And I've just pulled my pink across my work to change back over here. You can of course just trim it off and then reattach it if you prefer. But I'm now just going to work the last 2 stitches of the row, which is 2 single crochet back to the start of our round, over the top of both that pink and that white strand, just to lock them both in. Then I'm going to trim off the white because we are done with it. Now, row 6 is just 18 single crochet around, which sounds like a very simple row, but it's actually very, very fiddly because of how we want to position these teeth. We're going to use those stitches to pull these teeth down and up and out and surround them with gums so that they look like proper little teeth instead of just like little white spokes. So I'm going to start just by working 4 single crochet because that's nice and easy. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which brings us to that first white slip stitch, and I'm going to be working that single crochet over the top of that whole stitch. So I guess it's basically a spike stitch in a way, but you don't have to be super specific about it. Just make sure that you're working your stitch over the top, not through that slip stitch. So that's 5. Finding the next slip stitch and working over the top of it. 6. So now we have this first little tooth, and all I'm going to do is identify the slip stitch that falls between the teeth. I'm going to insert my hook underneath it. I'm going to yarn over so that the yarn is around behind the tooth. Pull up my loop, poke the tooth to the front between those loops, and yarn over and complete my single crochet. So if you see there, that little tooth is now sort of pulled forward and down, and it's surrounded by pink yarn, making it look like gum and tooth. I'm going to do that to the rest of these little teeth. I'll do one closer to camera just in case that wasn't super visible. So we start by, your yarn is around the back the way it normally would be. Insert your hook through the next slip stitch over, yarn over and pull up a loop, tuck your tooth to the front, yarn over and complete your stitch. There we are. I've worked 10 of my single crochet so far. I'm now sitting at the front of the mouth and 4 of my teeth have been pulled down into position. So I'm just going to hold this all the way up and give you a really good look at what that looks like. So this is the side we haven't done yet. Let's get that out of the way. So this is the side we haven't done yet, and this is the side that we have. So I have 2 single crochet to work over the top of those slip stitches around the roof of the mouth, because we've done the first one already. That's those 2, and that brings us to the teeth on the other side, and we're going to work them the exact same way. So one, 2, 3, 4, bringing us to our last white stitch, which was technically a single crochet. We're still going to work a single crochet over the top of it, and then just 2 normal single crochet in those final 2 stitches to get us back to the start of the round and finish off. So you'll note that the mouthpiece sort of bows in slightly. Think of like Granny's old dentures. But we've got 8 tiny little teeth all pointing down in the direction that we would want them to. And that will then, of course, slide into the mouth. And he gets all chompy with us, like. So, popping that to one side, we are now going to make the lower jaw, which is a smaller version of that. So it's a slightly smaller pink piece, and it only has 4 teeth. So we start with a magic ring of 6 in our pink. So then we're going to work 3 repeats of a single crochet, and then 3 single crochet all into the same stitch. That's our first one. We're going to do that 2 more times. So there is our vague little triangle. We're then going to work 3 single crochet in our pink, changing to our white in the 3rd stitch. So that's 2, and this is the 3rd one. Like so. So now we begin building the teeth again. So once again, while we have our white attached, we will be working in the back loops only. So we are going to start with a slip stitch, a chain 2 picot, a slip stitch, a chain 2 picot, 3 slip stitches, a chain 2 picot, slip stitch, a final chain 2 picot, a final slip stitch, and then a single crochet changing back to our pink. So there are our 4 little teeth, and in our pink we need to work just 1 single crochet to finish off the round. In row 4, we're then going to work 12 single crochet around, just the same we did with the top mouthpiece, working around those little teeth and over the top of the slip stitches. So there is my little bottom jaw piece. Little focus on it for you. Little teeth pointing upwards in this case, and they'll form our little possum's dentures. So finish off. Okay, so just to finish off the mouthpieces, I'm going to grab, I've got some darker pink here, but you can easily use red for this as well. And we're just going to make a little tongue by making a magic ring of 6. And then working 6 single crochet around. And finish off. So there is the little tongue. Next up, we're going to make some ears. So we're on, it's all downhill from here. All of the pieces from here are really, really simple. So with the ears, we're going to grab our dark grey and make a magic ring of 6. We're then going to work 6 increases around, so that's 1 increase in each stitch to bring us up to 12 stitches. Like so, and then row 3 is 10 slip stitches around. And then a decrease to finish off our row. And finish off. So that gives you just this little round ear that has a tiny little lip around the edge of it. And it's kind of curled over slightly just because of that final decrease. So you will need to make 2 of these. And then just pop them to one side. So next up we are going to make some little feet. Now all 4 of these legs are exactly the same. Now, and look, I know I'm not normally the kind of person to put nubs on my designs, but I figured there's already so much going on with the face and the mouth that you guys didn't really need me to stitch on every single toe. But if you were looking for some feet options that have those toes, I can point you in the direction of the Sugar Glider, as I believe they are at the correct scale if you wanted to have toe feet. But yeah, today I'm going to be doing little nubs. So grabbing our pink, we are going to start, guess how we're going to start? With a magic ring of 6. We're then going to work 6 single crochet around, changing to our dark grey in the 6th stitch. Like so. Row 3 is then 2 repeats of 2 single crochet and then an increase. It's our first one and we're going to do that again. Trim off our pink. And then work 2 rows of 8 single crochet around for a combined total of 16 stitches. And finish off. So if you have any of these little like loose tails, tuck them down inside. But there is one tiny little foot and we're going to make 4 of those in total. Like so. Pop them to one side and we will make our final piece, which is a tail. We're going to start with our magic ring of 6. Like so. We're then going to work 7 rows of 6 single crochet around for a combined total of 42 stitches. For row 9, we're then going to add a little bit of a kink to the tail. So we're going to start with a single crochet, then 3 single crochet all into the same stitch, a single crochet, and then single crochet 3 together. You'll note that that gives us about a 45-degree bend from the direction we were headed. Row 10 is then 6 single crochet around. Row 11 is 2 single crochet, and then a decrease, then 2 single crochet, bringing your row down to 5 stitches. And we're not going any narrower than that, I promise. We're then going to work 6 rows of 5 single crochet in each for a combined total of 30 stitches. So we're looking something like this, and finish off. We're then just going to take our yarn tail, and just like we did with the body, pull it through the front loops of each of those 5 stitches to close off that little gap. And tuck that end down inside the tail. So there is our tail. Okay, so now that we have all of our pieces made, the time has come to assemble our little possum. And I will of course be assembling the most complicated version of this, but do keep in mind that the way these pieces have been made, you can position them in lots of different ways, like in a more upright position, mouth open, mouth closed, and you can kind of like be creative with it, make him a little aeroplane. Yeah, you've got options, but I'm just going to be showing you how to assemble awake and screaming or dead posed possum for today. So we are going to start with the mouth. So I'm going to grab my face mask piece, and because I'm going to be using safety eyes, we're going to attach them now. But if you were just going to sew on eyes, like I think some crosses could be really funny for this particular guy, you could do this now as well, or you can do that a bit later. So the eyes go into row 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And mine have stems that are about that long. Okay, so I'm going to poke mine through both layers, like that. But if yours only go through one layer, you do have the option of just snapping them on through one layer. And I'm just loosely positioning them both in row 8, one on either side, and then we will finesse a little bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So yeah, that has left 3 stitches visible between them. Relatively even. The head itself will be folded over, but in general I think that's pretty good positioning. So I'm going to snap my backs on now, and I guarantee that by the time we are done with this process, these eyes will look crooked to me, because they always do. See if I can get a good clicky sound for you. That wasn't bad. We're only getting 1 pop, which isn't ideal, but I'll take it. So, eyes snapped on. Then we're going to grab the large inside mouthpiece that we made for the top, and we're going to line that up so that there is just a tiny little bit of white showing between the bottom of the nose and the top of this inner mouthpiece. We're going to grab some pins, and do not stab yourself. Pin it in place. And then we're going to line those teeth up along the edge. Pin in place. And line those teeth up along the other edge. And do note that this does cause like a little pocket inside the face, because your palette isn't as wide across as the head is, and that's intentional. I'm being careful to pin the edge of my mouthpiece so that there is like this lip, this folded over lip. That will be most of what you see. I'm going to use as many pins as I need to feel secure in that positioning. I think this is potentially one of the most advanced bits of assembly that I've ever attempted to share here. So I apologize if I'm not explaining everything properly, but if you leave me some comments on anything that's confusing, I will do my very best to answer them. So there we go. So we've got our hollow pocket inside. We've got our little teeth showing on the outside, and that's what it looks like on the inside right now. That will go on the body, but not quite yet. So I'm going to pop that to one side. We're not going to sew that just yet. So then we're going to take our bottom jaw and the inside mouthpiece for that jaw as well. And again, we're going to line it up so that the front of the pink piece is sort of just in from the front of the white. And we're going to pin it down on either side. But this piece should fit a little bit more comfortably. There's a lot of pins in that, but like this time there's no pocket. It kind of fits very comfortably inside that bottom piece with a little bit of an edge showing around the outside. Full on danger mode here. With the idea being that the two pieces will fit relatively together when we're ready for them to. So now I'm just going to take a little bit of my white yarn and I'm going to sew around the outer edge of this pink piece because we don't want to sew that opening shut, and around the whole edge of this pink piece. And that's what we're doing right now. There is no trick to this. There's never any trick to sewing. You just got to go as slowly and as carefully as you need to, and make sure that you fasten down every single pair of loops around the outside of the piece you're sewing on. So I literally just go one stitch at a time until it's all fastened down. And take a moment and tuck all of your ends in. You'll just thank yourself later if you work cleanly now. That is my top jaw. So with this body, it was intended that the smooth end where we started is the butt, and the pointy end where we finished is kind of the neck. So to make one long potato, the next thing we do is grab our jaw, and we're going to line up the middle of the pink with our finishing off point, like that. Then we're going to come to the underside and I'm going to make sure that the edge where the white changes back to the grey is covered by it. So I've got one pin in the middle on the top and one pin in the middle on the bottom, holding that in place. And then we're going to just curve the jaw so that it lines up with the curvature of the body. We're not stretching it too far outwards, but we might be stretching it slightly upwards. So that's my starting position for that bottom jaw. Now, before we sew anything on, we need to make sure that the top jaw is going to fit with it. So you take your top jaw and you line it up over the top, as the name suggests. And you can hinge this even if you want and make it so you can change it from screaming to quiet. But all we're doing right now is just checking to make sure that we're happy enough with the positioning of the pieces. And mine is going to go over the top relatively okay. So I'm going to sew this bottom jaw piece on now just by sewing around the edge. The stitches inside aren't going to show, but the stitches around this bottom outer edge will, and we're sewing white on white, so I am going to use white yarn for this bit as well. Okay, so that's what that jaw looks like. And then going to take the tongue piece and we're just going to sew it down where that pink is currently meeting the grey, like that. And at this point I am swapping to pink yarn for sewing because these stitches can be visible inside the mouth. There we go, just 2 quick little stitches and then tuck those ends in. Then we're going to take our top jaw and we're actually going to like fold the face piece part of this back as much as we can to expose this edge of the pink. And line that up. This can be a little bit tricky. You might need to like bend it and distort it a little bit. We want to line that pink up with the pink of the lower jaw. Like that. So leaving this bit folded up so that this is exposed. We're going to sew the pink down first. Like so, and now with those pins out. So you can see it's still just like a little bit of grey right down deep in there if you go squinting, but nobody's looking at a screaming opossum that closely. So now we have an unsecured back of head and you have to decide how open you want this mouth to be. I think I'm going to go quite screamy for this one. And it's just a matter of securing the jaw down on either side. And as mentioned, you can try and just make it hinging if you would prefer. I just think that sometimes the best option is to pick the pose you like and just sort of lock it in rather than going for a couple of poses that you're kind of just okay with. So I'm going quite open and screamy. I'm tucking the grey edge at the back of the head down against the body. And I'm adding as many pins as I need to make it hold its position, because we're going to be sewing every stitch down. So you can put a pin in every stitch if that helps, because scream comparison. So we're going to take a little bit of our grey now and sew down the rest of this face piece. Okay, like so. Screaming potato has been accomplished. So then it's just a matter of we take each of the ears and we line them up on the head behind those eyes. And we'll sew those on in a minute. We're also going to take the tail, and the chubby end is going to go up against the body. And I've decided that to stop it looking like an earthworm, it's just a horrible visual, that the tail curves upwards like this. I know that's probably not necessarily correct, but I think it's fun. It's an attack tail. To go with attack face. Again, we'll sew that on in a moment. And finally, we have our 4 little leg nubs. And we're just flattening the opening of those so that the finishing off point is at the back. And we're going to line those lines up with just the separation between the belly and the body there. So that white line. And we pin 2 at the front. And 2 at the back. And you make sure your possum stands up. And you make sure your possum plays dead. And then we just sew all of those pieces on. And there is your finished screaming Valentine's Day opossum. Give the gift of screams this Valentine's Day. So there are our finished possums. Opossums, possums. Sorry if this was a little bit strange. Okay, bye.